Okay, it's time to get started. Thank you everyone for joining our live lecture today. My name is Isaac and I'll be the lead instructor for the lecture. And today's topic will be Front-End Foundations Part 2. So what that means is this lecture will cover the second half of the Front-End Foundations curriculum. So if you're in that section, this is the lecture for you. A couple things to mention actually before we get started today. The first one being is that we're going to stop periodically throughout this lecture to open the floor for questions. So if you do have those come up along the way, we just ask you wait until those designated times to ask them. Another thing to mention is that we're recording this lecture. So once we're done here, we're going to post it on our YouTube channel and we're going to make that link available to you into your student resources. So diving right in. Let's go ahead and discuss what technologies we'll be learning about today. And there's two core technologies we're going to be focusing on. The first one being jQuery, and the second one being Bootstrap. Okay, so let's go ahead and review both of those. First, let's go to the official website for jQuery, and you can locate that at jQuery.com. Okay, so jQuery is a JavaScript library, okay, and simply what it does is it's going to compress our JavaScript to where we're going to be able to use simple jQuery methods to be able to perform what used to be pretty lengthy operations in just plain vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so if we reference their API documentation here, we could see they've just got a bunch of built-in methods to take care of various different JavaScript scenarios. Okay, so jQuery is going to be installed locally into each project we want it in because it's not native to the browser. So we're going to have to install it, and we're not going to do that globally on our machine. So today we're going to be using Bower Package Manager to install it into our project. Okay, and then Bootstrap is a design library. Okay, and so what it comes with is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript bundled up into a single library for you. And what this allows you to do is you can use their pre-built components to quickly build a beautiful website like you see here without having to really design anything yourself or worry about any of the page animations. Bootstrap's going to take care of all that for us. Okay, and just like jQuery, we can download it, install it per project we want, because Bootstrap is not native to the browser either, meaning, we have to, link it to our project for the browser to understand. Okay, so that being said, let's go ahead and let's create a base project. So I'll just do that right here on my desktop. And I'll call this project Front-End Foundations. And then we'll change into Front-End Foundations. And we'll open it up inside of our text editor. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and create an HTML doc. So I'm just going to create index.html. And then I'll go ahead and create an HTML skeleton. Okay, so we'll start with the parent element, we'll throw the head, and then we'll throw the title, at which point I'll put Front-End Foundations. Right, and then from here, let's put a body. Inside the body, let's just put some visible content. Let's do a header saying hello world. Okay, so from here we can save all, and let's go ahead and copy the path of the index here, and we'll just paste it right into our browser here. Okay, and we can see we're getting that markup rendered accordingly. Okay, so next let's go ahead and let's bring in jQuery. Okay, and as I mentioned a minute ago, we're going to be using Bower Package Manager to do this. Okay, so I'll start off by running Bower init, so we can initialize a bower.json file and track all of our installations there. Okay, so from here, it's just going to prompt me with a bunch of questions, and I'm just going to use all the default settings. Okay, so as you can see, I just quickly generate that. Okay, and now I'm going to track my jQuery installation to this file here. Okay, so how I'm going to do that is I will run the command Bower install jQuery -- save, enter. And this little flag at the end will save it here to my bower.json. So we'll just give it a minute to do that. Okay, so we can see jQuery got brought in, imported into our Bower components here. Okay, so now we just need to link that here in our index. Okay, so I'm going to go to dist, And I could go to jQuery.min.js, copy the path, and then down here, I'll go ahead and add an app scripts, and I'll point the source to the relative path. So we'll just start with the root and work our way down. So we'll just say our components and then jQuery. Okay, so see if this is loading in properly. We can save all and open up our browser inspect tool and go to network. And when we refresh, we can see that's loading in our document as well as jQuery, right? Script's loading in successfully. Okay, so now we can add our own custom script and we can begin to write some jQuery code. Okay, so I'm just going to create an app.js right in my root. Okay, and then just like I referenced this script, I'm also going to reference my app.js. I just got to make sure I do it below jQuery, right? So I can load this in first. Okay, and I'll just say app.js. Okay, so we can verify that's loading in. If we refresh our browser again, we can see that we have our custom script. Okay, so now let's go ahead and let's start by discussing jQuery's library symbol. Okay, so as a library sign, that is the $sign. Okay, so anytime that you see this $sign, that's going to be jQuery selector. It's its way of targeting elements and using the document object model to manipulate them. Okay, and so let's just go ahead and start off by console logging the $sign, so you can see that it really is, you know, a function underneath the hood. Okay, so we go to our console, we refresh. Okay, and as we can see, we're loading in jQuery, and this $sign now is representing that library. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's discuss how we can use this to tell if the document is ready, is loaded. Okay, so I'm just going to select the document using jQuery. Okay, and I'm going to use the ready method. Okay, and when it's ready, we'll run this callback function here. Okay, and let's just console log document ready. Okay, so let's save all, and we refresh. And we can see that as soon as the DOM loads in, right, it then console logs this. And the reason we want to do this is because jQuery relies on the DOM. So if we try to execute jQuery before it's loaded in, we're going to run into issues. Okay, so now we have you know, explored how we can target the document. Let's explore how we can target individual elements on the document, right? So let's go ahead and let's create an ID we can target. Okay, so I'm going to just pass in ID, and I'll call it greeting. Okay, and then so when the document loads in, I can use jQuery to change the color of this by targeting its ID. Okay, so how I can do this is I will say let greeting equals jQuery, and then to target an ID, I just use the hashtag reference, and we called it greeting. Okay, so from here, I can go ahead and I can assign this a value for its color. Okay, so I'm going to say greeting.css. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and I'll pass in color equal to red. Okay, and so this is how I can target single elements using jQuery, is using, you know, $sign combined with, you know, this hashtag reference. Okay, so let's save all, and when we refresh, we can see that we've changed the color of this element using our script, right? We don't have any CSS file set up or anything, right? We're using jQuery. And so this is, you know, the same with if we want to perform other operations, right? This is one example where we are changing the color, but jQuery actually has a lot of other built-in events, as we saw in their documentation, that we can utilize as well. Okay, so now we know how to target a single element. Let's go ahead and let's discuss how we can target groups of elements using a class selector. Okay, so let's say I'll get rid of the ID here, and I'll just put an H2 that says blah, and let's do an H3, and we'll say goodbye. Okay, so let's say we want to change the color of all three of these, right? But they're different element types, and we can't use three different IDs, right? So let's go ahead and let's pass in color red as the class name for each of these. Okay. And now I can reference that here in my script. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to target all of the color reds. Okay, so I'll say red group, oops, let red group equals, oops, no T, there we go, bling, and then to reference class, I just use this dot symbol here, right? And I'll say color red. Okay, and then from here, I can go ahead and I can say red group dot CSS. Okay, and I'll go ahead and say color is red. Okay, so now I'm targeting a group of elements instead of just a single element. Okay, I'm doing it by class instead of ID. Okay, so we refresh, and we can see that we have all three elements, and they were all three, you know, affected by this styling because we used the class selector for those. Okay, so depending on what you need, with jQuery, you can either select single elements or multiple elements. It really just depends on your situation, but this is the basic approach here. Okay, and we just reference them with the $, and then the class symbol or ID, right? It's dependent on what we are targeting. Okay, so now we have a hang of jQuery selectors. Let's go ahead and let's set up some jQuery events. Okay, so let's say that whenever we have a button clicked, we want to throw up a greeting. Okay, so let's go ahead and get rid of our different elements here. Okay, and let's put an input first. Okay, and we'll have a placeholder, and we'll put the greeting here. Okay, and then we'll put an ID for the greeting input. Okay, and then we'll put a button so that we can submit that. Okay, and this button will give an ID as well. We'll just call it my button. Okay, so now using jQuery, we can select both these elements, and we can take the value from this input and use it whenever this button is clicked. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just creating the variables to represent my different elements. So I'll start off with the input. Okay, I'll say greeting input equals bling. Okay, and then we're going to target it by its ID. Okay, so the ID was called greeting input. Okay, and then let's do the submit button, right? So I'll just say my button equals, then we'll target it by its ID, which is my button. Okay, so first things first is I need to set up an event listener. So when the button is clicked, we'll then capture the value from the input. Okay, so how I'm going to do this jQuery is I'll say my button.click. Then I just pass in a callback function to run whenever the button's clicked, in which case I will console log the value of the input. Okay, so I'm going to say greeting input.val invoke. Okay, and with jQuery, this is how we extract the value from an input, is this method. Okay, so now let's go ahead and save all, and let's see if we can get our program to work. So we refresh, and the greeting I'll just say is hello world, and we submit that greeting, and as we can see, that's what's populated here in our console log. Okay, so we could switch this up just to make sure it's working. We could say, hey there, submit, and as we can see, it's updating accordingly. Okay, so as you can see, again, jQuery is just kind of shorthand compressed JavaScript you know, and it's comprised of a bunch of these built-in methods, you know, .click, .val, right, that make our lives much easier when we're building these JavaScript-based applications. Because with vanilla JavaScript, we tend to have to repeat ourselves a lot and use long words, and it's just, you know, it can be done much quicker and more efficiently using jQuery library. Okay, so before we move on to Bootstrap, let's go ahead and open the floor and let's see if anyone has any questions so far. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, I don't hear anything, so I'm assuming that's a no. So let's go ahead and move on to Bootstrap. Okay, so just like jQuery, to get started with Bootstrap, we've got a link in, you know, the scripts and the links. So I'm going to start off by going to getbootstrap.com, and then I'm going to click on Getting Started, and they're going to give me some CDNs I can use. Okay, and so CDN is very much like referencing the script inside of our project, except we're going to reference a script in the cloud. Okay, and so let's go ahead and let's start by copying this link script here. Okay, and then we'll place it right below the title here. Okay, so that's going to load in the CSS for Bootstrap, because you got to remember that Bootstrap is a design library, so it comes with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, and this is going to make our lives much easier because we're not going to have to build all of our different web components from scratch. Bootstrap's going to have a lot of them already built for us, and we just have to kind of add our own custom flavor, if you will. Okay, so now we brought in the basic static styling. We need to bring in the functionality for the animations and the actual page interactions. Okay, so how we're going to do this is we bring in all of these links. Okay, so I'll copy this, and I just want to get rid of my current link for jQuery, because you'll notice that this top link here is referencing jQuery, right? The Bootstrap library depends on it. Okay, so instead of loading it in twice, I'm just going to load it in once. Okay, because that's all we need. And then, as you can see, it adds Popper.js, which is just a library for some animations for pop-ups. And then we've actually got, you know, the core Bootstrap JavaScript library. Okay, so as you notice, I'm making sure to load all these in before I load in, you know, any custom scripts, right? So now I've got that set up, I can now start using Bootstrap. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's get rid of our current logic here, or our markup, and let's start exploring some of the different parts of Bootstrap. Okay, so to start off, let's just go to Layout. Okay, and let's explore their grid system. Okay, so grid system is a way of separating the page into sections. So right now, you'll notice this is the little section here, then we got a middle section here, and then we got another section here. Okay, and so this is built with a grid system. And that's the same way we want to build our websites, is using a grid-like, you know, brick layer, if you will. Okay, so as you can see, they give you, you know, basic examples of how it works and how it should, you know, look as the overall layout. Okay, so here they have all the rules for the different screen sizes, so you can make it responsive, and your grid isn't just stuck in a static state, because as you change screen sizes, the width of your grid is going to change dramatically, so you're going to want to make sure those are custom from screen to screen. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's come down here, and let's just copy this basic grid here. Okay, so if we paste it right into our body, we can go ahead and save all, and let's go ahead and refresh this in our browser. Okay, so as you can see, it's separated, right? So it's 1 of 2 and 2 of 2, right? And so that's like 50-50. And then because I've got 3 grids here, these are all like 33, 33, 33, right? And that's actually going to be responsive to the size of the screen. So you'll notice if I shrunk my screen here, right, it's going to be responsive to the size of the screen. Okay, it won't be just so static. Okay, and then I can take it one step further and I can add custom columns dependent on the, how do you say it, the screen size itself, okay? So you'll see here we have specific breakpoints, right? And I can activate the small breakpoint or the medium breakpoint, right? And all those are going to line up with these screen widths here, okay? So let's explore that. I'm just going to come down and I'm going to grab one that has mixture, okay? So we can see here that this has you know, some standard medium sizes as well as some others. So let's go ahead and copy this. Okay, and we'll paste it right in like so. Okay, so now you'll notice that when it's on a medium size screen versus, you know, just the standard small, we're going to notice a difference in how it changes. Okay, so we refresh here. Okay, and when we go to inspect, we'll notice that these columns are actually changing, right? As I get to that more medium-sized screen, it's actually stacking and actually changing the number of columns that are spread across. So you'll notice that Bootstrap uses a series of 12 across, right? So we have one row, and that is populated with 12 columns, and those columns can be, you know, added in combinations to where, you know, you have, as you can see here, on medium screen, it's 8 and 4, right? So this is kind of the approach you're going to use, is just using the screen size to determine the overall width of the column, okay? And that's how we're going to make nice responsive layouts, such as this, okay? So now we've gone over layout with Bootstrap. Let's go over its components. Okay, and components are just different parts of a web page. Okay, so first one you see here is like an alert. Okay, and this is very self-explanatory, right? It's just supposed to alert the user, right? And they've got some very simple markup here we can use. So just to test this out, we can copy this and we can paste it in, right? Like so. And of course, in an ideal situation, we want to hide these until a specific time where the alert was appropriate, and then we would show it. But just to get an idea of how it works, we'll refresh. Okay, and as we can see, we get these nice alerts built for us. Okay, and as you can see, Bootstrap takes a lot of the overhead work out of the picture, so we don't have to worry about creating a CSS file with a bunch of custom colors and customizing the padding and the margin, right, and everything else. Bootstrap, again, just has it all ready to go for us. Okay, so those are alerts. It's an example of badges, right? So this would be similar to, you know, if you had notifications for something, right? If you were letting the user know in their dashboard they had a message or something else of that nature, you could use a badge. Okay, so let's save all, refresh that. As you can see, they just kind of come in, you know, the 6, 7 different headings based on what we need in our particular program. Okay, so breadcrumbs, you know, just a way of keeping track of what navigation comes before and after each other. And that way, the nav bar can always stay up to date. Buttons, these are really great because not only do you got, you know, solid buttons, but you've also got, you know, monocolor, you've got the outline buttons, large, small, block. I mean, they really cover just all your bases. Again, you really don't have to worry about much in the way of styling things because Bootstrap just does so much for you. So let's just go ahead and let's copy this group here and let's see what these look like in our browser. All right, so it's always good to just paste it on in and save all. And we refresh here. And we can see we're getting these nice buttons. They even have little animations, right? To where, you know, they're, when we hover over them, the pseudo selectors add nice little dark shades to let the user know, you know, and it's just built for a really great user experience. Okay, and here we have button groups, right? Maybe we don't want to separate them with spaces, so you know, we'll put groups, things for, you know, like page pagination, you know, and going through different returned results of a query, whatever else it might be. But button groups come in handy in that regard. Okay, and then we got cards, which, you know, are these nice little, you know, detailed explainers with an image, something of that nature, right? Little information about something, maybe a product description, right? There's a lot of uses for cards, but, you know, the basic gist is they're just, you know, come with a nice little outline, which kind of draws the attention to the card itself and gives it a little nice border to you know, separate it from the other web contents. Okay, so use those as needed. Carousel, this is where, you know, some of the animation comes into play, where we can actually, you know, go through different slides and display different content for the user, right? So this is really nice, because if you were to build one of these on your own, it would take a long time. It's a lot of work. So nice that they just have this all set ready to go, and you really just have to add in your own images and things of that nature. Okay, so there's a Bootstrap carousel and different options for that. Okay, then we have these little list groups here for collapsibles. Okay, so it's really great if you don't want to clutter your page with too much content, right? So you could hide it until the user says, you know, they want to read about it, and then of course right here you see we've got a nice little you know, nice little drop down with a, you know, very smooth animation. And so it really just depends on what you need, but I think you get the gist. It has, you know, lot of different display options for you in regards to displaying these lists and these details of different elements. Okay, so moving on, let's talk about drop downs. These are similar to collapsibles, except they're more for like menus, right? That's or sub selections, and so you can obviously have seen these online. They're very common. So another animation taken care of for you by Bootstrap. It's pretty nice. We can just use these on regular buttons too if we want. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's copy some of these and paste them into our browser just to see them in action. Okay, so save all. And we refresh. Okay, as we can see, a nice little animation, right, for a button here. Let us know the different options we have. Next, forms. This is probably one of the best parts about Bootstraps. Is normally forms can be a real pain when you have to do them from scratch, because the default browser styles are very raw, and you tend to have to, you know, do a ton of work just to make one of your inputs look like this and highlight nicely. Not to mention separating everything nice with spaces so it looks nice and symmetrical. So really, Bootstrap just you know, really knocks it all apart in regard to forms, because you really don't have to think much. You just have to come in here and grab your different form components and add them in as needed. So let's just go ahead and take this first form here and throw it in our markup and see it displayed in our browser, so we can see just how much work is taken off our shoulders. Right, so we refresh here. We can see we get this nice little form, right? Looks very professional, very sleek, and we really didn't have to do any work to get this to work. It's just it's ready to go out of the box, as they say. Okay, so next we got nice little input groups we can use, right? And these, you know, kind of go hand in hand with forms. You know, if we want group data together, we can, you know, add, you know, descriptions, icons, you know, checkboxes. Really, they got, you know, just a ton of different options depending on what you need. So this is a great resource to go for input groups. Okay. Jumbotron, this is just kind of, you know, maybe a page header or something to that nature. You know, you want to grab the attention of the user. It's pretty useful element component to use. Okay, then we got little list groups. If maybe you're looping through list of data and displaying those, you'd want to do it in a nice little list group. Maybe you want to, you know, highlight items, staple items, you know, make them links that people can click on, right? So you've got a plethora of different options in that regard as far as these list groups go. So let's just kind of take one we like here. Let's say, the links and button ones, and we'll just copy this right into our browser and test it out. Okay, so place the form with our list group here and save all and refresh the browser. As we can see, it's nice and ready to go. And again, we really didn't have to think much. It's just have to go in and change out this placeholder text, and it's ready to go. Okay, modals are very, very useful because they allow us to kind of freeze the browser, if you will, and direct all the attention to a pop-up. Okay, so this is where jQuery comes into play, and jQuery assists on the back end of this to create these page animations. Okay, so as you can see, this is what you're going to get as a result of using a modal. It's going to pop up in this fashion, and they'll close it, or or save change, right? Whatever the modal is responsible for, it's going to allow you to perform those actions. So let's go and launch a demo here, and as you can see, it's just this nice smooth action. It creates an overlay, right? Kind of dark, so it kind of takes the attention away from the background content and really focuses in on whatever information is being displayed. So you can use this from anything from like an alert to an error message, right? It's really up to you, but modals are very, very, very useful in that regard. So use them as needed. Okay. Next we got navs, right? Navs are pretty self-explanatory, right? Just anchor tags, ways of navigating to different parts of our application, right? And they even provide nav bars we can use too. So maybe if we just want something out of the box like this, right? They'll provide it for us, and we really don't have to do too much thinking to add our brand and our search box, right? Whatever else we're going to add, it'll just have it here for us. Okay. So again, this, as you probably see by now, Bootstrap is just really meant to plug in and go. You really aren't meant to have to think about much except where you want these components on your page. Bootstrap is really taking care of everything else for us in regard to how things look and that kind of thing. So let's just go ahead and let's take one of these nav bars. We'll just take this one and let's throw it in our browser. Okay, so go ahead and paste that on in, and we go back and refresh, and we can see we're getting this nice browser here, right? As you can see, it's even responsive to how big my page is, right? It's changing. It's playing this nice little hamburger icon in the event that I'm on a screen that it doesn't look nice if it's all scrunched together, right? So as you can see, maybe on a desktop it looks a little different, but again, all out of the box for us. We didn't have to add any of that logic. It just is set up and ready to go for us. And so that's how we can use nav bars. Pagination, this refers to, paginating through different results, right? Querying our database for the next set and then displaying those. So these are nice little out-of-the-box buttons you can use to kind of just, filter those results and make it easy for your user. Okay. Popovers, these are, little animations that, display popovers above our buttons here, right? You can do top, left, right. It's really just, depending on what we want to put some dialogue over. But as you can see, it's very great for, describing content and explaining what something's for. Progress, this is pretty self-explanatory. If, you're loading something and you want to display the progress, you can easily do that with these built-in progress bars. You've even got percentages and different heights, and really just the whole 9 yards, so you don't have to go and think of all that yourself. You can just add this in, and it's up and running for you. Okay. A couple last components. We got Scroll Spy here, which is just watching a nav and applying a new spy accordingly, right? As we're scrolling down with the content, it's watching our various nav options and updating that accordingly. scrolls by. Okay, and then finally, tooltips. They're similar to popovers, except they just activate when we hover over content, right? So it's kind of explanation or product description, whatever else it might be, and kind of guides the user in the right direction. So as you can see, we just got a handful of these different components that we can use to really make a nice looking site without hardly any custom styling on our end. It's really changing out the dialogue here of these different components. This is how Bootstrap's gained popularity so fast and is used in very successful websites like Twitter, because it is really beginner friendly. However, it comes off as extremely professional by the person using it. So that's always great, especially if you're first starting to code and maybe you don't have that good of an eye for design, or you just haven't had a lot of practice for design. You can just use a library like Bootstrap, and your users really won't know any different. They'll think you're a professional designer because everything looks so good. So that being said, let's go ahead and open the floor one more time and see if anyone has any last questions. Okay, so the floor is open. If you have questions, feel free to ask those now. Okay, I don't hear anything, so I'm going to take that as a no. But thank you, everyone, for stopping by today. Have a great rest of your day, and happy coding.